This game was made in only one day, and in this video, I'm going to show you the difference between this, a game made in 1 hour, and a game made in only 10 minutes. And you'll see exactly how I make each one. So I set my timer and got ready for the most stressful 10 minutes of my life. I knew I needed at least 2 objects for this game, so I made a triangle for the player and a square for the enemy. I threw them into Godot and I started on my player. So I made a new scene and I added the character body node, and I dragged the triangle in because this will be my ship. I meant to click this, but instead I clicked this, and again I freaked out because of the time pressure, so I just made my own collision shape. Now, my player needs some movement, and it's a shame I couldn't use any of this preset code. I made W the button to make you go forward, except it's not moving at all because I forgot to write this. Now it's time to test, and oh my god, that's way too fast. Anyways, I adjusted the speed and then I coded this line, which will basically slow me down if I'm not pressing anything. And this right here is arguably the most important part of this game, the dashing. Whenever you press space, you launch forward extra fast. And the triangle needs to look at the mouse, since that's the way you'll steer it. Little problem though, I'm not moving towards where I'm looking. And now I'm really starting to freak out because I have less than 2 minutes left and I don't even have an enemy yet. I made a square dude as quick as possible, gave it an area to detect things, and gave it a super accurate collision shape. If the player enters this area, it will increase the player's score by 1. So I duplicated a ton of these squares and placed them around the map. I forgot to make the movement work properly, and for some reason the score doesn't even work. Okay, just some super quick fixes. This will fix the movement, and this will fix the collision. And now time is up. Let's see what I got in 10 minutes. Okay, I promise it's not as bad as it looks. Trust me on this. Give me like 2 minutes, I promise it'll be fun. All I did was adjust the numbers for the speed and the camera zoom. And honestly, moving around in this is kind of fun. It exceeded my expectations and still looks like garbage. So let's see just how much better it can be when I have 1 full hour of development. I felt a lot better about having an entire hour for a game. Yeah, it's still not a lot of time, but I can definitely get something that actually resembles a game, instead of some dumb triangle with no purpose. I was feeling pretty confident for this one, so I made this grid to serve as the background in the game. And then I got a bit spicy with it, and I made the player a cooler triangle. Then I made the square and a rhombus, I think. Parallelogram? I don't know, it's a different shape. I threw them in Godot and I started on my player again. I added my sprite and then learned from my mistakes last time, and I just drew on my collision box from the beginning. I coded the movement similar to my 10-minute game, but don't worry, I'm not copying any code between these 3 games. I added the grid and some dashing, and this is what it looked like. Whoops, that's a bit too fast. Let me change that. Next, I fixed this grid because it was being a pain. I made the grid a lot larger, and I made a label for the power level on the top left. The power is basically just the fuel for the player, and it will drain over time. And when you're out of power, you lose. This code I'm adding right here is what's draining the power over time, and it's also showing the player how much power they have. I made it so it drains power whenever you dash to give some sort of incentive to not spam your dashes. Then I added the function that'll make the player die. Next up was to add a score, and to have a score I need to have an enemy that'll give me points. Again, I learned from my mistakes from the last game, and I made sure I was properly detecting the player. Let's test it and see how it, oh my god. So it works, but I did not realize the grid was off by this much. Like, look how fast it is. Okay, so now I have to readjust the grid, line things up, and try to make it look somewhat decent. I think I spent more than 10 minutes altogether on this grid, which doesn't sound like a lot of time, but I only had an hour for this, so that's like 1/6 of my time completely wasted. I then wanted to make the squares rotate a little bit randomly to give it a bit of a floating effect. Now, instead of constantly spawning in and deleting squares when they got hit, I just made them change positions on the map. Here you can see exactly what I'm talking about because they are moving to a different spot whenever I hit them. Obviously, I had to adjust a little bit on the distance and the randomness for the numbers, and I made them give you points when you hit them too, and it gives you more points based on how fast you hit them. I added a background next because gray is kind of boring. I tried white and off-white to make it look like graph paper, but I really wasn't liking the colors. I changed it to this dark pink color, which I wasn't crazy about, but I knew I had to stop wasting time on the background because I had more stuff to get done. With just a few minutes left, I made a game over screen whenever you lose. To transfer the player's score over to the game over screen, I made it a global variable, and I'll be honest, I have no idea what happened here, and I didn't get the footage of me actually typing out my script, but I promise you I had it and I had it done before the time was up, and then when I tried to run it, it just completely messed up my game. But since the game crashed, I lost that progress on it, so I just had to redo it. So let's test the final product. Not too bad. I expected it to be a little bit better, but I'm happy with it.
Oh my goodness!
I forgot the other thing. Just because it would annoy me not to add these to the game, I spent like 2 minutes and I copied the code from the squares and put it on these things, and instead of it giving you points when you hit them, it gives you extra power. And then I changed the background from that ugly pink to a gray. And this is what I got in 1 hour, plus like 2 minutes. But enough of this game. Now it's time for me to make the best game possible in 24 hours. But before I do that, I'd like to make a huge announcement. Snail with a Shotgun will be a full-fledged game on Steam. And if you want to support it, it'll help me out a ton if you wishlist it now. Now let's get back to the video. When making assets, I had the idea of making multiple enemies, or at least some with more health. I thought it would be cool to smash into enemies back and forth to make it feel a bit more high-paced and satisfying. I also wanted a hazard that you'd have to avoid. So I opened Godot and I added in my assets. At this point, I felt like an expert at creating this type of game. The base movement again was pretty similar to the other two games. I can make my camera smoothly follow my player so you can see I'm actually moving. I added some squares as a point of reference so I don't do what I did last game. Dashing was the next thing to add, and it was super simple because it was just like my other games. When I was making my first enemy, I had the idea of making them all as one, and the different shapes would show how much health they have. That's why I went from 6 sides to 5 to 4 to infinite for some reason. The circle, or Billy, was supposed to be more like a coin that you pick up, which is why it's smaller and originally had a different hitbox. This is me testing out the back and forth dashing to see if it'll be a good addition, and I liked it a lot. Just need to play with the movement a little bit more. I made a lot of progress between these two recordings. First thing you'll notice is a CRT filter I added. It's a super cool shader that I found on Godot shaders, and I did a little customization to it. I made the movement a lot tighter too. Dashing is a lot easier to control now. I also made the player change color during the dash to be a visual indicator for the player. The shader has a property called chromatic aberration, which I increase when I smash into enemies. It basically separates the RGB values and misaligns them. I wasn't really feeling the green and blue, so I figured the perfect color for chromatic aberration was white. Since white is literally just red, blue, and green maxed out, that means it'll have the most chromatic aberration effect out of any color. If you don't understand what I meant, it's okay. Just know, lots of colors, very good, very nice. I'm glad I did it though because it looks insanely good. To give a bit of an impact, I made this jiggle animation. That's not supposed to happen. Okay, now check this out. So that's cool, but it's missing something. So I added particle effects whenever you dash. I also changed when the chromatic aberration happens. Now it happens when you dash, not when you dash into an enemy. Next, I made the background dark, and then I zoomed out the camera a little bit whenever you dash. I added an energy bar, which is the same thing as the power level in my previous game, but I thought energy sounded cooler than power. And I made the circles much bigger so it would match the size of the other shapes, and this is what I have finished in about 4 to 5 hours. The next morning I wake up and I made a pretty simple addition. I replaced the mouse cursor with this. Then I added particles whenever you hit the circles, and an asteroid that you will die if you hit. At first I made it so you can dash through the asteroids, but it didn't feel very intuitive or reliable. I updated the energy bar, I added stars for the background, I added a score, I added a label that shows you how many points you gain from that shape, and the shapes give you points based on how fast you hit them. The shapes are made to respawn if they're either too far from the player or if you break one. The asteroids are similar to the shapes where they respawn when they're too far away, but I made them launch towards the player with a little bit of randomness. And then I made sound effects for the game. I needed a game over screen real quick, and then I made a title screen. I really like this title screen, and you can even turn off the effects in the option menu. And this is the final game. I named it SMASHTRONAUT BLITZ as a tribute to my first game that I made. You can play it right now on itch.io, and you can try to beat my high score, but I know you won't. I had a blast working on it, and it's just crazy to look back and see the improvement I've made in this short time. If you have a similar goal and want to look back to see your own improvement, let me tell you why today's sponsor, Brilliant, could be right for you. Brilliant provides a way of interactive learning, offering thousands of lessons in math, data analysis, programming, and AI. And if you're wanting to get into game development, just about all of these topics are a necessity. Brilliant has their platform tailored to be uniquely effective. They start by setting a strong foundation and build upon that with hands-on learning, a method proven to be 6 times more effective than watching a lecture video. Brilliant helps you improve your critical thinking through problem solving instead of memorizing. On top of that, it incentivizes you to develop a daily learning habit, which is something I'm a strong believer in. In just a few minutes a day, Brilliant helps you build knowledge with fun lessons you can do at any time. To try everything Brilliant has to offer, you can get a 30-day free trial. Just visit brilliant.org/gambit or click the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thank you Brilliant for sponsoring this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.